Hello, I'm Ollie and this is CriminOlly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, crimey horror or maybe horrific crime. It's my weekly wrap up. So I've got 4 books to talk to you about today, all of which sit in that slightly grey space between crime and horror. So 3 of them I've finished, 1 of them I'm currently reading. But with all 4, if you'd asked me at different points during my reading of them whether they were crime or horror, I might have given you a different answer. I think in the end I've decided that 3 of them are crime and 1 of them is horror, but they all definitely had elements of both. Before I do that though, I just wanted to do 3 things quickly. So first is an update on my Read What You Own challenge. So I am now 8 books in. So the 3 books I've finished this week are books 6, 7 and 8. And my average page count on those books is exactly 250 pages, which is always my target with this. I don't like to dip below 250 pages as an average page count because I feel like that's taking the mickey a little bit. So yes, 8 books finished, 250 pages, and really enjoying it. And haven't been tempted at all so far in this restarted Read What You Own challenge. The second thing I wanted to talk about was I did a review on the channel this week of a book which I now can't find my copy of. Here it is. Called Dragonard by an author called Rupert Gilchrist, and I suggested in that video that I thought Rupert Gilchrist was a pseudonym, but I hadn't been able to find out any more information about whether that was true or not. Now Eerie, who is a long-time viewer of the channel and is incredibly good at finding stuff out, incredibly good at doing research, sent me an email saying that she had discovered Rupert Gilchrist's true identity. So she'd done a bit of sleuthing online, and his real name was Peter Menegas, and he did publish some horror books under that name around the same time as Dragonard, I think. The most famous of which is called The Dollhouse. So I am going to try and track down some of his books once I've finished the Read What You Own challenge and see what I make of them, because certainly based on Dragonard, he is quite a talented writer despite the huge number of problems I have with that book. He can definitely tell a tale, so I'm interested to see what he does with horror fiction, especially as Dragonard is so explicit in terms of sex and violence. It feels like he'd be a good fit for writing horror as well. The other author I wanted to talk about briefly is an author called Warren B. Murphy. So I had an email. I get emails from people all the time, asking me questions and things like that, and I really enjoy receiving them. I had an email from a viewer called Ian, who was asking if I'd ever read any books by Warren B. Murphy and if I'd talked about him on the channel. So Warren B. Murphy is probably best known for being one of the co-creators of the Remo Williams Destroyer series of books, and I have read the first of those and talked about it on the channel at some point. I couldn't tell you exactly when. It was quite a while ago. But Ian was recommending another series of books by Murphy called the Rizzoni and Jackson series, which I'd never heard of, but when I looked them up, they sound really interesting. So it's not nearly as long running a series as the Destroyer series. I think there's 5 or 6 books in the series, but like a cop buddy series, and apparently is considered to be the inspiration for the Lethal Weapon films, to the extent that Warren Murphy actually gets a credit on Lethal Weapon 2, because Shane Black, who wrote the films, obviously I don't know if there was a legal case or something like that, but Shane Black obviously felt that he needed to give credit where it was due. So I really want to check out these Rizzoni and Jackson books at some point as well. Right, moving on to what I finished this week then. So 3 things finished, as I said. The first of those was Psycho 2 by Robert Bloch, which has this fantastic 80s cover. This was not nearly as good as Psycho, I have to say, but still interesting and enjoyable. This, of the 4 books I'm going to talk about this week, is the one that I would label as horror, but it's kind of structured a lot more like a crime novel. There is, detection and stuff like that, and a manhunt. So this has Norman Bates, 20 years, I'm looking at the back, 20 years after the events of the first book, escaping from the mental asylum that he's been in, and going on a rampage. He revisits several characters from the original book, and you can probably guess what happens to them. So it was interesting to see Bloch, like, not just write about Bates, but to bring back previous characters as well, including Mary Crane, as she is in this book. So she's Marion Crane in the movie, but in the book she's Mary Crane, including her sister, and her sister's, no, what is it? It's Mary Crane's boyfriend. So they get revisited. And there's alongside Bates's, escape, there's a film being made about the events that take place in Psycho. So that side of it was really, really interestingly done. And it has a really good twist at the end as well. I really enjoyed the final twist. So it's not nearly as good as Psycho. It's probably too long. One of the things that was fantastic about Psycho was how compressed and taut it was as a novel. This feels like at kind of 300 odd pages. It's a little bit longer than it needed to be, and it definitely doesn't have the imagination and flair of Psycho. You don't feel like you are getting into the character's brain in the same way that you do in Psycho. But it was still a fun read. I did enjoy it. After that, then, a book that was sent to me a while ago and very strongly recommended by Heidi, one of my viewers, who has great taste in books, I have to say. The Bottoms by Joe R Lansdale. This was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed this. So I will be doing a review of this on the channel probably in the week ahead. So this is a crime novel set in the 1930s, I think, either the 20s or 30s. And it's one of those books that's written from the perspective of the central character, who is now an old man, in an old people's home, who is reflecting back on the events of his childhood. It's often compared to Kill a Mockingbird in reviews, and it is a book about kind of racial justice in the South. But I felt the book it really reminded me of was True Grit by Charles Portis in terms of that narrative structure. So in terms of the fact you've got someone who is elderly looking back on their childhood. So there's some great coming of age stuff in here. The central kind of mystery plot is around the murder of a black woman who the central character finds her body at the start of the book. And his father, who is the local sheriff, is involved in the investigation into her murder. But so a really, really good mystery. It has what feel like kind of elements of the supernatural at times, and just completely gripping, really, really suspenseful, really heartfelt and thoughtful in terms of its depiction of racism in the States at that time, but also a really, really good coming of age story. So I can't recommend it highly enough. Moving on then to a book I've just finished this morning, Crawlspace by Herbert Lieberman. So a book I've been meaning to read for a long, long time, but this wasn't what I was expecting. So I was expecting a kind of classic suspense novel. I was expecting that kind of a book. So the essentials of the plot, and I won't tell you too much because it would give things away, but the essentials of the plot are there's a kind of fairly well-to-do retired couple who live, I forget where they live, but in the Midwest or something like that in the US. And this young man who comes to their house to check their oil. So they've got an oil-fired heating system, and he comes to check that out and refill the tanks and things like that. And he ends up moving into their house without them realising. So they've got in the basement of their house this area which is less high. It's a 3 foot high kind of crawl space, and he ends up coming back to their house and living in there. And they eventually realise that, and it's about the relationship that grows up between the three of them and the impacts of that relationship on all three of them. So on the couple, but on the young guy as well, and also on the local community. It was a really, really interesting book. It's definitely very suspenseful at times and quite shocking at times. And I would label it a crime novel as a result of the kind of the essentials of the plot. But it's also a book that is horrific at times, unsettling at times, or unsettling most of the way through, to be honest with you. And, a really interesting work of kind of psychological horror, I guess. So in the end, I think I decided it was a crime novel, but it definitely has elements of horror, and a very, very interesting book. Definitely one that's worth checking out. I think it's out of print as a physical book now, but I think you can still get it digitally. Or like me, you can buy a battered old second-hand copy off eBay. So that's the three things I finished this week. Then the thing I'm currently reading, I'm not sure if I like this or not yet. I was expecting to love it, and I haven't quite made my mind up. So this is Little Tales of Misogyny by Patricia Highsmith, which is a short story collection. There's like, I guess, about 20 short stories in here, and they are really short stories. They are a few pages each, and it's reminding me a bit of I've forgotten the guy's name now. Oh, that's terrible. Frederick Brown. So I read a collection of science fiction short stories a while ago by an author called Frederick Brown, which are, again, like super short. Like some of them are less than a page. And at most they were a few pages. And in that, Frederick Brown gives you like a complete short story. He introduces you to characters, he introduces you to a concept, and then he kind of wraps things up. And Highsmith does something similar in this. They are like really stripped down short stories. There's not like huge amounts of character building or anything like that. She just gives you the bare bones structure, really. And they're weird. They're quite unusual and quite unsettling, some of these stories. And I can't quite make out my mind why she wrote them, I suppose, other than she was just experimenting with different things and like trying out different styles. They're very different from the quite measured approach that she takes with her suspense fiction, where you get, tend to get like really deep character studies and a gradual build up of things. So I'm about, not quite halfway through, about 40% through. I'm definitely going to keep reading it, but I'm not enjoying it as much as I enjoy her novels, I have to say. Okay, that's all the books done yet. All the books done then. So we're nearly at the end of the month, clearly. I will be finishing the Patricia Highsmith book, I suspect, today. And then we'll pick up something short to read tomorrow. Maybe I'll catch up on some of my comics that are laying around unread tomorrow as well. In terms of channel stuff then, so in the last week you've had my review of Dragonard, which I just talked about. You had a small book haul, so my kind of final book haul with the final few books I bought before starting the Read What Your Own challenge. And you had a video talking about a new Kickstarter project for a charity horror comic called Horror Not Hate, which looks absolutely fantastic. In the week ahead then, so we are getting to that point in the year now as we tick into December where I need to start thinking about doing top 10 videos. So I'm probably not going to do any in the week ahead, but fairly soon you will start getting some top 10 videos from me. So I will do, as I did last year, and I think probably the year before as well, my 10 favourite horror books of the year, my 10 favourite crime books of the year, and my 10 favourite other books of the year. So I've got those lists kind of built pretty much, and I'll be filming those videos before too long, but I want to try and get a few more books under my belt before I film them, just in case there are any last minute surprises. So look out for those kind of mid-December probably. In the week ahead then you'll get my December TBR video, you'll get probably a review of the bottoms, and I think I'm going to do the end of the year book tag as well. So that's a book tag that people tend to do at this time of year that has some interesting questions in it. My plans for the Library of Forgotten Books project at the moment are, given I know that my December videos are going to be filled up a little bit with those top 10s, is I probably won't do my first Library of Forgotten Books video until the new year. So I'll probably do that in January, and that will give me time to plan it all out properly and structure how I want to do the videos. So look out for that, probably January. Anyway, I will leave things there. Hope you all had a fantastic reading week. And as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.